Yo, I'm Josh Paulison, and no, I'm not wearing the same shirt that I wore in the previous video. Anyway, I want to talk about data managers. So, what is a data manager? Why do you care? Why should you care? Why should you feel guilty? Why should I shame you using words like this? Well, the reason why a data manager is useful is because you want to have all of your data collected in one place. That might sound like a stupid thing to say because you need your data somewhere, but I've seen different projects where the way that data is managed is you have one instance at the top and it references every other single thing throughout the whole project. So maybe you have an object that's like all game data, and then you're like, I want to find the audio information, and you're like, okay, go all game data dot I'm trying to think of something that doesn't directly reference a project I work on. All game data dot button 7 dot audio data. Okay, what if I want button 8's audio data? What if I don't know what the current button number is? What if I want to have a list of just the button data? Oh, well, if you want the button data, if you want the button audio data for all the potential buttons, then you got to go through every single button and grab all the audio data. It's just that easy, except when you get 5 layers deep and you hate yourself. So let's talk about data management a little bit. So the context that I'm showing you, I'm going to explain a little bit of the goals of this project because I think that you'll be able to correlate that to your own project and talk about how I solved the problems here. So this game is a game where you click a button. It is an amazing game. It is called Josh Paulison's Button Mildly Remastered Edition. Now, the thing that you need to know is that one of the goals for project updates is that you can change out the sound for the button. And I wanted that to be disconnected from graphical updates so that you could have one series of sounds for the button and one series of graphics. So it's not just necessarily sounds changing on press and release. I wanted to have a whole different set of logic where you could press the button and hold it and then maybe have a motorcycle engine revving up, and then you release the button and it stops the sound. And so there's sounds on press and release, but there's also sounds on holding the button. It might be that it even checks where your mouse is on the button and that changes the sound. And so there's a lot of different logic that could happen on pressing and releasing the button. That's why we have a button audio controller. When it sounds like such a simple thing, I overcomplicated it because I think that's funny. So we've got this button audio controller, and it has data on all the different ways you can press and release the buttons, which again, I wanted to be separate from the graphics because I didn't want it to necessarily be associated directly with graphics. I might have it so that at the end that is what it is, but I wanted it to be logically separate. And so how does that play out, you might ask? I'm glad you asked because I was going to tell you anyway. We've got all of our source files and we've got our templates. Where are our templates? Here they are. So you can see here that we've got these different folders for button audio. Now, these are different audio templates, and here are different graphical templates, but we're going to focus on the audio right now. And each of these has a template.json file. Now, what does a template.json file look like? Well, it can look like a file. More specifically, here's what it could look like. And again, this is over-engineered because this project's ridiculous. So we've got these events. This is just JSON. We've got a GUID for this, which it's not actually a GUID. Don't tell Microsoft. And then we've got triggers, and we've got our first trigger, which is on this event. We're going to run this action. So when the button is pressed, we're going to play a sound with these arguments. So it uses these, passes them to play sound. And it's really not that important what the data is. The question is, how do we store this data? So we've got Sky template. This is a bit different. On press, resume looping sound, on release paused. It's working a bit differently. And I've got references, credits. So it's that's to pat myself on the back. So if we run over to button audio controller.js, the question is, how do we load this data in? It's in all these folders. It's organized in a way that's easy for designers to work with. Ideally, it's also easy for me to have updates where people can create new audio packs and upload them to Steam Workshop, and you can get them. That's not coming for a while, I think. But that's something that I'm planning on. So I've got this data manager in here. In this case, it's so similar between two use cases that I'm using one class type. You might not want to do that for your use case. So I do want to give that heads up right now. So if we go into Sound Template Manager, this ends up getting created, and it is template manager.create, and it passes along the template folder, which in this case for audio is the button audio folder. And if we go back over here, you're going to see that's what this is. We got templates, button audio. So now if I go into here, this is how we are managing all of this data. This knows where the templates folder is. It's got the template folder path, it loads in all of the different folders. So it knows about all the folders. This should really be like get dir files and folders or something. I feel like there's another term that I'm not thinking of. Get dir references is a bad name. I don't know. That's one of those, what do I name this thing? But then it ends up loading the template file from each folder, and it ends up running this logic where it parses it and it stores it all in Template Manager. So what I'm doing for data management is that I have a folder that contains all of the audio information. Again, what I could have done is I could have had it so that this is a huge chain. Like there's one JSON file that contains all of the data. That was an option. Instead, what I've opted for is these subfolders that contain individual bits. And I'll talk a little bit more about why and what the benefits are, but I'm gonna just wrap up showing you kind of how this is set up. So we load all these files in, we parse it all on startup. Wouldn't have to parse it on startup. We could parse it as they're requested, but it parses them all on startup. And then I end up storing it. I just have this templates by GUID. You could also have templates in a list without the GUID, but I only needed it in this way. So for my context, this is fine. And then when I want to get a template by its GUID, which in this case is not really a GUID, but anyway, I use get template by GUID. And so here, what I do is that when I want to load in one of the template files, I do this.sound template equals await this.sound template manager. So we're on the button audio controller right now. It goes to the manager, it gets the template by the GUID, and then it initializes everything. Why is this not capitalized right? Anyway, don't worry about that. Ignore that. It doesn't exist. It gets the template and it uses the data setting it up. Now, again, something that I've seen is that for a project, you can just have something at the top that references everything, right? Like we could have had a JSON file that looks something like this. We could have had, whoops, this is in the wrong spot. We could have had something like button data. Let me zoom in a bit here. And then this could have been like, okay, button audio data. And then this is an array of every instance, or maybe it's all key value pairs. So it's like button one audio name, like default audio, and then it contains name default audio again, or you don't, you get it by the key. Oh, that's fun. Anyway, this could contain the triggers and stuff like that. The thing is that this is a pretty common approach that you could see. And then you've got all of your different audio templates, audio, all this stuff. And it's all in one file, and it's beautiful. Just kidding, it's not. Let me tell you why it's not beautiful, and why it will create deep sadness. So, having it load in dynamically with each of these different templates, and having it stored in one place, means that I can very quickly look through them all and grab information on them. For example, I mentioned that I want to be able to get all of the audio for a player to, or I didn't mention this, but anyway, I want to have a menu where the player can choose what audio they're using. Right now it might be using graphics and audio at the same time, but I want to let the user have those options. I can look in one place to get all that data. If you have this, then you're looking through all of this. And what I would often see, because people think in OOP in a lot of cases, and so they think that everything should be an object that works like people think it works. We get this, we could have button data set. I'll call it data set. I like doing that for multiple things. And then we have button one type or default button. And then this now is this horrendously interesting object, which has audio. And then this has triggers, and it could be worse than this for sure. And then we got graphic. And now how am I gonna get all of this? Oh, I know how I'm gonna get all of it. What I'm gonna have to do in this case is go through every single button. So I'm gonna have to be going through this object, go through every single button, hope that I know all of the names. So I have to figure out, oh, is this a button type? Because what if I want something else in button data set? And so if I'm doing it by keys, getting all the button keys, getting all them audios, and throwing them into a list somewhere else that then I'm maybe recaching, it can just become a mess. And I do want to say I'm using this with templates, but this would apply to other types of logic as well. This could apply to logic for game objects in a game that are running around. It could apply to the little guys that are running around. It could apply to all sorts of different things. And the problem with this approach is that if I want to get any one type of data and look through it, it's a pain in the butt. If I 100% of the time want this like data together, then it's probably more efficient for me to just have it together. But if that's not the case, if I know that I want all graphics at once, all audio at once, or I want to be able to add and remove them more easily, this is not the way to do it. This is just going to cause pain, and it's rough to work with. The result of what we have instead is that if I look over here, if I remove animals, animals no longer exist in the project. If I delete this folder, I'm not going to delete it because that would make me sad. But let's say that I delete this folder, then when we go over to our template manager and we are loading in all of our templates, it's just looking through the folder for files. It's not going to find that folder anymore. It's not going to exist. And so I could add 20 of them, remove 10 of them. I'm not going in and editing a JSON file directly. I'm fine. This is also great for workshop use, because now if I want to let users add their own sound effects, hey, you got somebody else's sound effect, throw it into this folder, start the game, it's there. You're not editing a core JSON file. You're not having to do any shenanigans like that. It's all in one place, but separated. And so it's very easy to also then look at this folder, know what this file actually the heck is. Because we're not looking at some mess like this, where we can also then break the JSON for the entire game because we messed up a spot in just one of the spots. And you might be like, well, then that's what you make tooling for. Well, then if we want to avoid that step and save time, let's just do this. And we can still make tooling for this, but this helps us keep the logic separate in a way where we can actually remove items and add items very safely. And I do want to mention that even though right here this is going through the directory, if we wanted to, we could change this so that we just have a list of our accepted templates. And here's something else that's cool that we can do with this pretty easily now. Let's say that I only wanted to load certain templates if you have DLC or if you don't have DLC or whatever. Or we want to override our templates. That's another good use case. So if we have DLC that overrides our templates, like for example, maybe you have a DLC for a project where you add that in, and now these enemies have additional abilities or they have additional stats on them. Well, then you just override the file in your templates by GUID with the DLC instance, and you're good to go. Because you're just loading in templates by GUID. So you just have your additional folder that's like your DLC templates, you load it in over top next, and you get rid of all the old stuff. Now, you could handle that in other ways as well. But what I'm saying is that this makes it pretty easy to add and remove things and also override things if you need to. Again, you can handle that in different ways, like loading in files that you're just overwriting, not the most exciting thing in the world. I get that. The goal here is to make your data easy to work with and collected together so that you can iterate over it very easily. I'm using this with templates, but you can use it with other types. And my hope is that this shows you one of the ways that you can end up taking your data and putting it in a readable way. Something else that I want to mention that's really nice with this. Let's say that you're generating templates dynamically in the game. How do we serialize all of them out? You take this one thing, and this is where you might also want to have a list where it's just like templates and it's just a list. So what you can also do is that you can have this in addition to this, and then we just add it onto this list, right? This is an option, and I might just keep that because that is handy to have. They're by reference anyway. You do that, you serialize this out, or you go through each of these and you add it into a file. You add it into a folder based on the GUID. You can let people very easily add data here, and it's really easy to serialize alike data. And if you want to make a whole new template system for your game, you know what you're not doing? You're not going into this file, adding in a new field, and trying to then update all of your old save files, all of your old data files, and make sure that this isn't broken. Now, if this is static data that's always the same, you could argue it doesn't matter as much. If you want this to be dynamic at all, though, you're going to have a heck of a time. And I've worked in projects where we had a heck of a time trying to update save files, and it's horrendous, and it wastes so much time. So separating out your like data doesn't necessarily even mean in different files. It could just be that like if you have button data set here, you can do something where you have audio data, and then you have graphic data, and then when you're adding a new data type, then you have new data type. And that's pretty safe, right? That's a pretty safe thing to do. And this is assuming JSON. You could use you can have other file formats. It's just, this is an example to get things up and running quickly. The whole goal with your project is to be able to work on your project efficiently in a way that causes the least friction possible. If you're working on your project alone, you can get away with a lot of bad practices and nobody cares because you're the only one who cares and you don't care. As soon as you want to bring somebody else into the project, it will be pain. And I mean that. I've seen some horrendous things, and I have felt the worst for designers that I've ever felt, seeing some of the horrors that they have to endure. So my recommendation here is make sure that your like data has some sort of manager. In this case, this is templates, but it could be other data as well. You can store it in an array. You can store it by a key, like in this case, squid. And then you can get it by those values. And that makes it very easy to add and remove instances. That makes it very easy for you to collect like data. That makes it very easy for you to see, hey, how many audio types do we have? Oh, we have 3. Rather than trying to go through a master JSON file and grab all that data. You can just read the folder. You can find every like instance in there and work with that. And I do want to add that even though we're talking about this in a web code context, you can take this over into Unity pretty easily. And I can show that in another video if you'd like more examples of that. But you can end up creating a file based on a shared folder or based on addressables. Like you can look at an addressables catalog and figure out what's in there. If you're not using addressables, then you can end up looking through resources or whatever and figure out what's in there, which might not be as efficient. But anyway, it depends. There's pros and cons to both of them. Resources is always in memory, which can be a blessing, but can be a big curse. Anyway, that's not something to get into in this video. This is something that you can do to help organize your data more cleanly and to save yourself some pain and make your designers smile, because I think that the greatest joy for any programmer is when a designer on a project smiles. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope that this helped you out. I do tutoring, and I also make other people browser source tooling, which is what you're seeing this video in. And it's a lot of fun to work on, and I can show you a little bit of what's going on here because I think it's cool, and maybe you don't think it's cool, but if so, then you're wrong. Well, it needs work. Okay, I admit that, but got all this tooling that I can overlay, and I can look at my stream in the back. You wouldn't have to include that, but it just lets me see what's going on the stream and do a bunch of different functionality while keeping an eye on what's actually happening. So anyway, if you're interested in tutoring or in custom tooling, then I've got links for that down below. Hope they have a fantastic day, and good luck in your programming journeys. Let me know if you have any questions, want to see this in other contexts, etc. And I hope that you have a fantastic life. Take care.